Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. How are you?
Hello, thank you for joining me today for my virtual talks. This is a series of interviews with interesting personalities of fashion and lifestyle around the world. And I have the pleasure to meet you today through one of your first books, hopefully.
It is my first book, yes.
Tell me a little bit about you, please. How did you start in this field of fashion, of sustainable fashion, specifically?
Specifically, the sustainable part of my experience. I've been a fashion designer. It's how I trained. It's my history in my career has always been working as a designer. But I came across sustainable fashion really through a series of synchronicities, like many people have, I think. It was probably about 20 years ago now, maybe a little bit more. I decided to take my MA quite late in life. And at that time, I was just beginning to get an interest in, I'd actually just made the transition from being a full-time designer in the industry to working in academia. And so I had been using that change of career to start to research and start to expand my knowledge into areas that I hadn't needed to as a commercial designer. So initially technology and materials. And then I happened to be asked when I first started teaching at FIT to represent them at a conference in Brazil.
Wow.
And so I attended, I gave a talk on, I think it was on technological materials in apparel design at the time. But I had found out just a couple of weeks before I went, I just happened to read an article about an incredible women's cooperative in the favela in Rio there called Copa, who worked with international fashion designers and interior designers and product designers around the world, but worked with women in the favela with traditional crafts.
Wow.
And so I was lucky enough to be put in touch with them. And I met with them while I was there and just fell in love with the work that they were doing. That here were these women living in Huasinia, the largest favela in South America, I believe. 180,000 residents.
My God.
And so, and here they were working with Alexander Herkovich and Carlos Spinelli and Oshklin and I was just amazed at the work that they were doing. And that really started this journey for me I'd always had a love of textiles. Being a designer, that was innate within me. And so being able to combine this love of textiles with doing good and with helping people just was so inspirational. It just sort of shifted my entire focus. And at a time when I was really tired of commercial fashion.
Sass, and when was this approximately?
Oh my gosh. Now we're going back. Copa, unfortunately, actually, I believe it's just restarted. I was going to say it's no longer in business, but it hasn't been for several years. But I believe the founder, Maria Teresa Leal, has actually just restarted it recently. So, well, it's got to be 20 years ago.
20 years ago. Yeah, I was going to say that. Yeah. And how interesting that Osklen was participating in that project already, because I love his work. Definitely.
I've done a lot of work with, various cooperatives and different groups across Brazil in particular.
Yeah.
So Osklin, Oscar Metsavati.
Oscar, yes, Oscar.
Yeah,
Oscar.
And he's fantastic. I mean, they have Institute E or Instituto E, which is their sustainable textile division, which Nina Braga heads, and it's fantastic.
How amazing, you loved it. And also, did you learn some Portuguese or Spanish in that experience?
At the time, probably a little bit. I'm afraid it's long since forgotten. I had the luxury at the time of being a full-time teacher at FIT, and so I had 3 months vacation in the summer and 1 in the winter, and I would spend all 4 months in Brazil with the cooperative.
Right. So you definitely were working at FIT University for a long, long time, if I'm not wrong.
Yep.
This lasted almost like 17 years, right?
Yeah, I think it was about 18 in total. So you're pretty close, 17, 18, yes.
Sass, and how did you get? I assume you are British, and that now you are back living in the UK, is it not?
Yeah, it's actually the first time I've been back living in the UK for 30 years. So I feel very much like a foreigner at the moment.
Oh my God. Tell us all about FIT experience, please, and going back to your own country and working there. I am also interested in knowing that.
Sure, FIT was a wonderful experience for me. Having worked in design and working a lot in commercial design,
Yeah.
I got rather tired of the commercial restrictions, the pricing, the being reliant on all of the commercial components of it, sales and reducing the costs. And I got really quite tired of it in the end, and it was no longer working for me. I wasn't happy with where I was or what I was doing. So I started teaching just a single class at FIT. And at the time, they just embraced me. They were very happy to have someone who at the time was relatively young, completely engaged and knowledgeable of their industry, and could relate that in the classroom and cared about the students. So they embraced me. And supported me very quickly. I became tenured faculty. From going from teaching one class, I became fully tenured faculty within a 3-year time period. And they used to send me all over as sort of to various conferences to talk about FIT and its connection to the industry. They're very proud of that industry connection. They're very much an industry-based school. So, and I found that after working in commercial fashion, academia just embraced a part of me that was not encouraged or supported within commercial design. So it allowed me to really expand my knowledge base and to gain a whole lot of new skills. And so I really was very grateful for them. And it went from there, from being a part-time teacher to a full-time teacher to tenured to international advisor for the fashion department to, then what? Then I did 4 years in Italy for them, excuse me. I was...
Oh, nice. I didn't know that FIT had a connection with Italy. In what way? Do they have like a subsidiary of the university?
Yes, effectively. They have 2 study abroad programs there. They have many, but they have 2 in Italy, one in Florence in collaboration with Polimoda, and the other one in Milan with Politecnico di Milano. In fact, FIT's been in Florence for over 30 years.
Oh my God, I didn't know. How amazing.
They predated Polimoda. In fact, they founded Polimoda. They were one and the same 30 years ago.
Big.
And then they ended up sort of growing in their own right and expanding and so on. So yeah, so I was resident director there for 4 years. So I moved to Italy for them.
And so I'm sure you met Mrs. Valerie Steele.
Valerie, yes, I know Valerie, of course, from New York as the director of the museum there, yes. And she had, in fact, I mean, you pulled up my book earlier. She was kind enough for both of my books to do a book launch through the museum and to organize talks and book signings and so on. So yes, she was also quite supportive of my writing. So
how nice. Yeah, she's a wonderful historian as well, and I had the big opportunity to interview her a couple of times. And also then you went to Dubai, isn't it?
Well, after Italy, I went back to New York, and I was assistant dean, then associate dean, and then finally interim dean for the School of Art and Design. And then I moved to Dubai for 2 years. So
that? Well, it's amazing. I visited once, and I found it so, I mean, obviously different from our countries. How did you get there?
It was just an opportunity that came up. I got to a stage where I felt I knew I needed to change something, and so I evaluate a few different options. I wanted to do some more travel. I wanted to have a different experience. FIT at that time was opening up an outpost in South Korea, and I had actually been part of establishing that over a period of years. So that was one consideration. But this particular one came up, and it just seemed like an opportunity I wouldn't normally have the option to do, and I couldn't afford to turn down. So I was invited to be the founding dean of the Dubai Institute of Design and Innovation in Dubai, which is in partnership with Parsons, not FIT, and with MIT, so Massachusetts Institute of Technology.
And it's not only fashion, right? It's also product. It's
industrial design, it's multimedia design, and it's the business as well component as well. So, and then fashion. But it was an incredible opportunity because it's a cross-disciplinary school. The curriculum was written by MIT.
Right.
This is cutting edge, experiential curriculum that is not specific to a discipline. And so it was an amazing opportunity to found a school. You know, you're very lucky if you get the opportunity to be a founding dean. There's something quite special and unique.
Yeah, congratulations for that. It's amazing for you, for your curriculum, I bet.
It was an incredible experience, and Dubai is an interesting place. You know, there are things in that region of the world that just aren't possible in many other regions of the world. And in fairness, are not achievable in the democratic world. It requires a ruling government that is very much invested in the next generation and their children and their children's children, as opposed to their 3 or 4 year political term. And so they make the investment and the commitment to projects on a huge scale that they may never realize in their own lifetime. And that doesn't happen in the democratic world.
So interesting. Yeah. And what do they think now that I would like to, in a way, but then you came back to the UK and now you are living in Manchester, right?
Yeah, there's a big shift. So I spent just over 2 years in Dubai. So I founded the school. We brought the first year of students in. They recruited for the second year of students. I had recruited for my second round of faculty hires. And I decided that, we were no longer as aligned as we initially were.
Right.
So I decided it was time to make a change. And I just took 2 years off. Quite honestly, I took the time off to complete my PhD, which I'd been struggling to complete while I was dean in FIT and then dean in Dubai, and it kept being pushed aside. So I took the time.
And this PhD is on fashion.
Yep, it's on the collaboration between traditional craftsmanship and luxury fashion.
Wow, so interesting.
Yeah, so just finishing that up now.
I hope you write a book on that someday.
Oh, I will.
Definitely. It would be amazing. So yes. I was wondering while I was listening to you, you've been in a way teaching or amongst young people in the US, in the UK now, and back in Dubai. Mm-hmm. May I ask, where do you find the most interesting and open-minded alumni?
You know what? I don't know that I can really stack one place up against another. I think the beauty of our world and of people and my experience in travel, for which I'm forever grateful, is the diversity. It's not that one is better or than another. It's just that everywhere is different, and that's the incredible beauty of our world, isn't it, really?
I understand. I agree. And so regarding sustainability and fashion, I would like to know I've read your book, but not exactly, maybe not many people in Argentina, although I'm happy to know that this book has been translated in Spanish, and this is so amazing. And I will make sure people kind of know about it in Spanish. I'm happy that Lawrence King has realized that. in a way, some countries like, well, Argentina, we do have people who speak English, but not the majority of the population. And other countries like Uruguay, Peru, Chile, and South Americans, we really need to offer our young generations books in their own language as well.
Absolutely. I totally agree with that. Yeah, both my books were actually translated into Spanish and in Italian.
I am so happy for that. And so it's easier for me to, in a way, recommend your books here.
Of course.
And so going back to this amazing subject matter, which is fashion and sustainability, there is much talk about it right now, especially during lockdown and pandemia, and especially during the last years. What is your view, and what is your consideration of sustainable fashion? When is fashion sustainable for Sass Brown?
You know, that there's a challenge really trying to define sustainability. I mean, the Brundtland Commission back from the UN, and what is it, 1987, I think it was, when the definition of that the UN Commission, the Brundtland Commission, came up with of sustainability. Now, it was not specific to fashion, but effectively that's the defining term or the meaning behind sustainability, that we don't deplete resources for to the extent that it impacts the next generation.
Yes.
When it comes to fashion, I think, you know, we're uniquely challenged in fashion design that the supply chain is so incredibly complex, and there is no perfect solution. There is no perfectly sustainable product or sustainable brand. The reality is we have so many challenges that you have to make personal decisions, whether it's about your company or yourself, and what are your values and what do you choose to support. Sure. So, for example, you can't simultaneously support artisanship in the developing world and local designers and economy and reduced carbon footprint. Those three things don't work together. You have to make a choice. So that doesn't mean that artisanship is any more or less valuable than a reduction in a carbon footprint or supporting local economy. They're all really important things, but you have to choose between them. You can't do them all. Or water footprint, or reduction of or elimination of waste, or zero waste, or upcycling, or all of these different perspectives. They're choices, and you can't do everything, and you can't do everything well. So you have to make a choice and choose what's important to you, what's important to your customers, what you can, you know, completely commit to and get behind. And then if you can continue and grow and expand your expressions of sustainability, fantastic. But you need to do something, and you need to do something well to begin with. And that's a matter of choice.
That's so true. It's so difficult. So I had planned to, in a way, ask you some questions on sustainability and then refer to your book, but I'm afraid I will have to connect them. So when you started to write or to prepare this eco fashion book a while ago, you were one of the first ones, I bet.
Yeah, on fashion, I was.
On fashion, yes.
There were a few books out at the time about sustainability, but they tended to be sustainable design, big picture. So you get recycled tables next to probably a slogan, beige organic t-shirt. And I knew what was going on around the world. I've been, you know, I travel considerably, and I knew what designers were doing in Valparaiso, Chile, and Buenos Aires, and Nottingham Trent. And I knew there was incredible work being done, and it was being communicated within the local community, but the dots weren't being joined globally. And so many designers felt they were working in their own little bubble and struggling away on their own, when the reality was there were myriads of them around the world doing exactly the same thing, and they needed to see what each other was doing.
Right, that's so true. And so how did you find these designers you mentioned here?
Well, I guess it started with, you know, my own knowledge and just grew from there. As I said, I tend to travel anyway, whether it was at that time traveling for FIT and speaking, and anywhere I go, I will always try and find out about the local design community, the emerging space, the artisans, the craftspeople,
Right.
often connect to a university that may have some, that may ask me to be speaking there while I'm there. So a lot of it came out of my own travels. And of course, like anything, once you know people, they introduce you to other people.
Right.
And,
Sure,
and
sure.
so it goes.
Yeah, I was planning to introduce you to ours as well later, maybe.
Love to.
Our new designers getting their focus, putting their focus on sustainability.
Fantastic.
So, in regarding this community trade chapter you kind of develop here, have you find new ones after writing this book? Would you mention or highlight any of them right now?
Oh, sure, many. The book, when I first published that book, I launched my website at the same time. It's archived now. It still exists, but hasn't been refreshed for a few years. So Eco Fashion Talk.
Yeah, I wonder, you have met new ones, right? All these
Yes,
years.
many, but there are still some of those that remain some of my favorites. You know, there are, the fashion industry, of course, is quite fluid, and you know, companies go out of business and new ones come up, but there are some in those two books that I still love. So Alabama Channing, for example, wrote the introduction, I think it was of the second book, Refashioned. So yeah, and she is in the first one, and then she did the introduction for the other book, the second book.
By any chance, do you have any pictures to share with us on your
yeah, let me open up some.
That would be amazing, because as I am planning to share this interview so people can relate to this on different names. I would like you to kind of highlight, because I have to say we are quite new on this field in Argentina and South America. You might know by now. And it's developing very quickly now, because definitely the pandemic and all this fashion crisis has grown in a way. So people have started to do their own stuff and put their interest in this field, but we still have a lot to learn and to open.
The last time I was in Buenos Aires, it had, and that's sadly been a few years now, it had a really vibrant emerging design community that were small and growing and working with hand skills, with the hand knitting or leather work and so on. I remember it quite affectionately and being really engrossed in the work that was being done there.
Oh, how nice. When did you come and how?
Gosh, it would have been several years ago now. It was when I was still visiting Parker in Brazil, and so it was a quick, easy trip. I rented an apartment that overlooked Cementerio de Recoleta for a couple of weeks, and just spent 2 weeks there, just traveling and, you know, discovering. And I was really nicely surprised by the emerging design scene there. So.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, we are quite creative down here. We like design. Argentines love design. Yep. We are always looking up to the Italians. Most of us have our grandparents coming from Italy or Spain, right. Even from Poland or other Eastern European countries as well. But in the last years, and because of our economic crisis, you might know, people have started to do more of this, start to create their own fashion. So what is for you slow fashion? I was wondering if you consider haute couture like a big example of slow fashion.
Traditional haute couture, yes. I mean, the tradition of the luxury industry is in fact built on craftsmanship.
Right.
The reality is, of course, that that's often not the case anymore. Yes, the Kelly bag is still produced in small ateliers in a limited number. But how much of the couture, yes, the actual real haute couture is, of course, slow fashion. It is hand produced with incredible skills, but that's a very small portion of the industry. And the rest of the production that they do is not done in that way. I mean, the bulk of luxury products are produced in China alongside mass market products. So what they retain and what they have done, such as LVMH, buying out the métiers in Paris, such as Lognon and so on, the handmade pleaters and flower makers for the couture industry, is fantastic. Equally, I would put alongside that someone like the Ethical Fashion Initiative, which is, Simone Cipriani heads that, and it's a flagship program of the United Nations, and they work with designers predominantly in Africa, or rather they do work with designers, but they predominantly work with artisans and traditional craftspeople and connect them to the luxury industry. So Vivienne Westwood's African Made Bag collection is done through them.
So this sorry to go back to this point. So this organization is called Eco Fashion, and it is run from the United Nations, you said?
Yeah, it's actually called the Ethical Fashion Initiative, the EFI. And it's a flagship program of the United Nations that comes under the ITC, without getting too complicated here. But they specialize in connecting artisans and traditional craftspeople, predominantly in Africa. They also work in Haiti and in Afghanistan, but focus predominantly on Africa, with premium and luxury designer brands for long-term relationships.
When you mentioned this, I kind of think for a while, and I'm paying much attention to her work, to Maria Grazia Chiuri in Dior. Have you seen?
Yes, absolutely. For sure, that's wonderful collaboration.
What would you say about her work during this last seasons from the big Dior brand, relating her, this amazing international couture brand with artisans from around the world, from her own Puglia people in Italy, and also from Africa, if I'm not wrong?
That I don't know if they're working with the EFI, but I strongly suspect they are. I think it's fantastic. I think that true luxury is artisanship and craftsmanship, and that's equal whether it's from Nigeria or it's from Puglia in Italy. We're talking about skills and craftsmanship and traditions that have a material culture and a value, and take time and skills that have taken generations to develop.
Sure.
And
sorry, and I interrupted you, but you were about to show me some pictures, right?
Oh, I think you have to allow me the ability to share my screen. I think.
Sure, sure, I will.
I think if you go under share screen, it gives you the option, or maybe it's under.
Permitir que los participantes cancelen, cambien su nombre, permitir que los participantes. I think you could.
When it says, it's telling me that host disabled participant screen sharing, so it's not actually letting me.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's usually something that you have to enable as the host. Otherwise,
right now I just configured that you could.
Okay, so let's have a look. Indeed, you did. Yes, you did. All right, give me a second.
What a relief. And I'm so sorry, because sometimes I am not very keen on technology. So thank you for your patience.
It's okay.
Oh, how nice that you share with us this. I love it.
So that was, I can't remember which book this was from. I think it's from the second book, Refashioned. And it's the introduction by Natalie Channing, so the founder of Alabama Channing, and she kindly wrote the foreword for my second book. She was featured in the first, but wrote the foreword for the second book. And I'm still an incredible fan of her work. I'm lucky enough to have a few pieces by her.
Oh, how nice.
I think the work that she does is quite amazing. I mean, I think she's a perfect example of a designer that is grounded in place, you know, in geographic location. Her single material is organic, you know, it's cotton jersey, which has an incredible, you know, history from that region, obviously cotton growing region of the world, and one of the t-shirt producing capitals of the world, and so on. But for a designer to utilize a single material season after season after season, especially a humble material like
Right.
cotton jersey,
I
and
agree.
to continue to make it fresh and new and beautiful. I mean, her main line, every single stitch in that collection is hand sewn, every seam, everything. So that really is the ultimate expression of slow fashion.
Right. And she's still in business, right?
Yep, and doing very well to the best of my knowledge. Certainly still going. I think one of the things I love about her also is the democracy of her brand. So inevitably, some of her pieces are quite expensive. You're talking about an incredible amount of hand labor. But equally, you can buy her book where her patterns live and you can make it yourself, or you can buy a kit with the pieces of fabric cut out, and so you can have it shipped to you and you can sew it yourself for a couple of $100 instead of a couple of $1,000. So
How
I
nice.
think being able to do that is truly democratic access, and I think that's wonderful.
How amazing. Love
She's
it.
one. Let me see who else I have here on this. Let's have a look. This is a designer that was in my second book. Definitely also still going, 2ETN, and that's a jewelry designer based in the US also.
Sure. I would like to mention that your second book was Refashioned Cutting Edge Clothing from Recycled Materials. I loved the name of the book, and I really would like to have it with me because it's so interesting. People think that doing recycling is just like to wear at home or
No.
to the beach, right? Just that. And recycling is much more, right?
Yeah, I wrote the book because there were so many amazing designers doing things that were just exquisite and exceptional, right, and could not have been produced from new materials. And actually, this is a good example. This is a husband and wife team, and the wife upcycles historic traditional crystals, and her husband hand paints the tiny little icons, you know, in the tradition of Memoria, Victorian death jewelry, and it's beautiful and it has a lovely story behind it, and they're exquisite pieces from historic crystals, and so that's just really lovely. It's an exquisite brand. So yeah, I mean, I love this piece down here on the bottom left. I mean, how beautiful is it?
Can you mention or do you recall any fair trade or community oriented brands, or no, not brands, yeah, brands in the UK?
In the UK, yes. I mean, probably one of the first, sadly no longer functioning as a brand, but still really important, would be Ursula de Castro's brand from somewhere. Ursula is one of the founders of Fashion Revolution.
Yeah.
So her along with Carrie Summers, and Ursula had a brand called From Somewhere, and she was one of the first upcycling designers.
And you mentioned her here, right? I remember her name.
In my book, exactly. So she did at that time a phenomenal collaboration with Speedo, when I think it's going back to, I want to say 97, but I could be wrong, the Beijing Olympics. Speedo had a fast skin fabric that they had developed, which gave their swimmers a competitive advantage. Yeah. They won, I think, 80 gold medals in that, or 80, broke 80 world records, I should say.
From somewhere, here you have it. Yeah.
That's it, yes.
She's not designing anymore.
Well, I think Fashion Revolution has grown so exponentially. It takes a lot of her focus.
Right.
And so she does also teach a little bit, and they do so many different initiatives through Fashion Revolution.
Sure.
So,
any other brands would you, for instance, what do you think about Stella McCartney?
Yeah,
Tricky, huh?
She is many people's favorite sustainable designer. I'm just going to close these and pull
Sure.
up another couple of, okay.
So. If you have any other examples later, you could show them to us.
She's very much embedded in the mainstream industry, and that in itself is challenging. The model for mainstream, irrelevant what part of the market you're at, mass production or premium, is not a sustainable model. It's all about exponential growth. It's all about price points. It's all about, and I am more enamored by the artisans of the world. I want to promote the emerging designers of the world. I want to talk about designers that are challenging the system of fashion, not working within it. So I don't know Stella personally. Obviously, she's exceptionally renowned in this space, and she's done some incredible initiatives. But my focus has always been on smaller designers, emerging designers, and people that are challenging that system.
How nice. Yeah. Would you mention any emerging designers right now from the UK, for instance, the Mother of Pearl, for instance?
Well, Mother of Pearl is one of them for sure. I've got terrible name
right.
memory in terms of names. You can show me any image and I will remember the work, face, for everything, but with names I'm pretty terrible.
No problem. Don't feel no. I just want to give information to people who are.
Sure. I mean, Christopher Rayburn is one of another favorite designer here in the UK.
Would you write it for me, please?
Oh, Christopher Rayburn. Let me put it in the...
Christopher Rayburn.
Yes, Chris. Here we go. Christopher Rayburn. He's a British designer, predominantly works with upcycling, has become extremely popular in Europe. Focuses a lot on menswear, so does women's wear, but and works mostly with post-consumer military waste, so very technical garments, very detailed. He does a lot of collaborations, just did one with Timberland boots.
Okay, good.
So, but
it's a good way to do for sustainability and gain and earn money, right?
Yeah, he has a great business, and since we've been in lockdown for so long here, a lot of his sharing and communication is online, so you can go for little tours through his studio. On his website you can watch his process. He's been really very good at sharing and communicating through social media. So there's lots.
I will research him and share him as well. So, do you think, Sass, that fast fashion has kind of ended? Will fast fashion be dead by the end of this lockdown we are all living around the world?
I doubt it. The truth is that there needs to be many solutions, not just one.
Right.
The entire world is not ready to give up fast fashion and suddenly start investing in clothes and in longevity and, artisanship and so on. And it's not fair to ask everybody. I mean, for many people, clothing is something they need to buy rather than invest in anyway because of whatever financial restrictions they have and so on. So I think that in an ideal world, we will have many, many solutions to sustainability. And one of them may indeed be faster fashion that is entirely circular and can, with the reduced energy footprint. We are not nearly there yet, but it is one possible. And the reality is we've seen that, the breaks that we've had in lockdown, the minute that the UK came out of that first wave of lockdown, now we're in a second wave of lockdown. When we came out, there were lines around the block for Primark.
Saint Primark. Yeah. It's unbeatable, right? It's unbeatable. Oh my God.
A generation that grows up, with fashion that is effectively disposable, that doesn't cost any more than a coffee or a pizza, it becomes a way of life. And you're talking about a massive culture change,
Yeah.
of values change, to get people to give that up. It took a long time to get to this place. My mother's generation used to spend 3 months' wages buying a winter coat that had to last for at least 10 years.
Or recycling their parents' coats. I had the big chance to visit in London the 40s fashion exhibition. And
that was fantastic. I saw that, yes.
And I learned so much, and I understood why vintage is so important in the UK.
Exactly.
And I got this little book, which I love.
I have it too. It's lovely.
And I think people are doing this right now because they had to stay home and they cannot go out to spend in a shopping mall. And in a way, I'm happy people are going back to those kind of I mean, it's as you said, it's part of a culture. It's part of a culture.
Yeah. And the British, you're absolutely right. It's a good observation. The British have a history of it. You know, they have always sort of put a value in that past. There's a sort of a romantic, historic perspective to the British character that likes to look back.
But also because you have gone so I mean, such tough times with the wars, and I'm happy. So I'm sure that affected the society and the culture so much. And I think this pandemic is kind of moving us, the South Americans, or at least the Argentinians, to this field of getting more sustainable with our clothes. People are moving their wardrobes, and in a way it's re-encountering with their own stuff and saying, well, why didn't I use this or wear that, right? So
I remember one of the designers I interviewed for, I think possibly my first book, who is a Brazilian designer and was upcycling bags. And I remember him saying, you know, when I started doing what I started doing, we didn't call it upcycling. We just didn't have the money. We had to use things again. It wasn't an option to throw them away.
It's a good way of starting as well. I mean, why not?
Absolutely.
So, and now I was wondering, regarding you writing a book, I found it so interesting at that point when I read it for the first time in 2010, and I was still browsing on it when I offered a history of fashion course last month during lockdown.
Oh, so fantastic.
Thank you. When you, how would you give us, what advice would you give us to start our own books? If someone wants to write a book, which would be your advices to start that process?
I think it depends how you want to go about publishing it. I mean, obviously, you know, there are lots of apps and digital platforms now that you can publish a magazine or publish effectively, there's no limit. So a magazine could easily be a book. So you can certainly do it that way and promote it through social media. The more traditional way through a publisher is perfectly feasible. I mean, I had to write a proposal for both of my books. So effectively, it was about a dozen-page document that had a preliminary index, so a plan of what it would include. It would have a little bit of a proposal about why my book would be fulfilling a niche in the market, you know, what the competition was. It's like a little mini business plan for a book, right? What I'm going to offer that nobody else is doing, who my competitors are, what's already out there that I'm doing differently. A list of what it would include, and then some sample development pages. So it would give them a sense of my writing capability as well as a potential visual layout.
Good.
And that was the proposal that I wrote for each of my books. And then with a traditional publisher, my publisher is Lawrence King Publishing in the UK. And like many big publishers, they partner with publishers all over the world. So it's Art Bloom in Spain, or Logos in Italy, or Chronicle in the US, because both of my books were published through all of those outlets as well.
Oh, nice.
And so they will take that proposal, if there is interest, to a budget meeting, and then they'll decide alongside a lot of other proposals which books they're going to invest in and how much they're going to invest in it, and then they'll come back and you have to negotiate the contract. How much money you're going to get up front, if there's a royalty, at what point the royalty kicks in, because it's usually after they've made back the money on the investment that they put in you.
That was my next question, is if you earn any money or just pay.
No, not really. I mean, I had an advance for writing both books, nothing I could retire on or even close, sadly. I think Stephen King's probably the only person that actually makes money writing books.
That's what I've heard. Yeah. And in a way, I would stay talking to you during all day, but just to kind of round a little bit, what would your advice be for someone who is studying fashion or attending her fashion studies in a university, or trying to become a designer? What would be your advices regarding sustainability and fashion?
Knowledge, study, build community, talk to people. You know, the challenge with sustainable fashion, or with sustainability generally, is it's a very complex problem. With, you know, so many layers of issues. We're talking about carbon footprint, waste, pollution, air pollution, soil, water pollution, microfibers, you know, energy footprints, labor. There are animal welfare. There are so many perspectives to this. You can't possibly know everything. So you have to be interested. You have to continue to learn. It's a journey. There isn't an end point where you say, okay, I know it all now, I'm done. And to develop what your specific values are. And that's often shaped by your own experiences or your own culture. You may live in a water-stressed region of the world, for example, so that may be what makes water an issue that's more important to you than perhaps, I don't know, pollution or carbon footprint. So it's really about having the interest to continually read and to research. It's amazing how it can start. If you're really genuinely interested, a single article will always reference other people, other designers, other, you know, platforms. And if you have the interest to follow those links and to continue, they will take you on a journey. But it's for you to have that interest in the first place.
Wow, that's so important. Okay, thank you for your kind words and your detailed orientation. I so much agree. And I hope people go back in a way to reading books, right? Now that we're home. And so finally, tell me a little bit about London. Sorry, you're living in Manchester or in London?
I'm here just now, just for another. You can probably see my dreadful backdrop is packed boxes, because the intention is that I'll complete my PhD by Christmas, and then I'll move to London. London is ultimately home for me, so I'm here because this is the university that I'm completing my PhD in.
So in London, which markets would you visit when you go back?
All of them. I have a passion for markets. I love markets. And London's fantastic for that. You know, Brick Lane on a Sunday and walk through to Spitalfields Market. Saturday, Portobello and Petticoat Lane. And London markets are almost incomparable. I love them.
So do I. And Portobello, I'm happy you mentioned, because it's my favorite one. That's
absolutely. I have some wonderful vintage garment finds from Portobello. It's a great place to go on a Saturday.
Everything is so amazing there, right? Every single item is so well kept, and so much love on that, right?
Absolutely.
So I love vintage, so I just would stay there until that late night, you know, browsing and talking to people. So
It's an
thank you.
ideal weekend for me. That's a perfect weekend for me. You know, go down to the market, stop and have a lovely cup of tea and a croissant somewhere, and then shopping, you know, browsing a little bit more. And yeah, it's a perfect weekend.
It's a perfect weekend in London. That's the first thing I would suggest. And then go to the V&A, please.
Oh, yeah. I can't be in London without going to the V&A. That's one of my must-do trips.
Must-do places to go. The first thing to go. Yeah. I hope they open their new bags exhibition soon.
Yes.
And I hope to, and I'm hoping to go back to London next year. I'm afraid this year was not the right one to travel. We had to stay in quarantine there, so it was not a good idea to go.
Well, let me know when you're coming. Hopefully I'll be in London by then too.
Yeah, we can go to Portobello together. How amazing!
That sounds fantastic.
I love it. I love London. I used to work in Harrods when I lived there.
Ah.
I worked at the international designers area, selling Prada, Chanel, and obviously Alexander McQueen, which at that point I still didn't understand his amazingly fantastic world. And then I kind of understood, and I'm such a big fan of his work and his legacy now.
It takes time, that level of sophistication to understand quality and philosophy and the avant-garde design aesthetic. It takes time. You don't suddenly love Yohji Yamamoto. You know, you have to, it's a journey to get there.
I understand. That is so true. It is so true. It's like architecture. It's like wine. It's like any other creative field. Thank you so much, Sass, for your time. Thank you for your being with us. I enjoyed so much, and I hope to meet you next year in London.
I would love that. It was my pleasure. Thank you.
Bye. Take care. Have a good night.
Bye bye. Bye bye.
Vamos a despedir a nuestra invitada Sass Brown, que escribió este libro y otro libro sobre moda sustentable en este ciclo de Virtual Talks by Flor, con entrevistados del mundo, de la moda, del lifestyle y del ámbito del diseño de interior. Gracias, nos vemos. Chao, los espero en el próximo.